Yo, from America's Man's Man. I remember when I was a kid, that used to be a big thing. I had a gym teacher, and she was trying to be cool and ingratiate herself. I'll tell you, a couple things stand out in the way of older people who tried to ingratiate themselves with us as kids by trying to imitate some media thing that everyone was into, some pop culture, which is really electronic advertising culture, and failed miserably. One of them was a gym teacher, and God love her. I mean, she was just she was wonderful, and she had a really great heart. That's right, a woman gym teacher who I'm not bashing, because she was really great. She was trying, and and she'd do this thing. She was like, yo, 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 or something like that. She was like, and she'd like get all down, with the thumb and the belt buckle and all that. It's like, yo, yo, yo. She'd start a class like that. And on that note, by the way, just to kind of illustrate how culture has been fragmented, good, an acquaintance of mine had recently talked about how up in New Hampshire, I guess a daycare person had done something bad, with her child, and I bring this up because I'm thinking of the yo-yo gym teacher. We'll call her the yo-yo gym teacher for lack of better. I don't want to use names because it's not necessary. And there's nothing bad here, so there's no judgment, no judgment. But just to kind of illustrate a broader cultural trend. There was a substitute gym teacher, and I remember thinking as a kid, well, I knew, and it happened to be someone that I knew in my family, but I just remember thinking how weird it was to have a teacher that I actually knew from some context outside of teaching, and this is an illustration, I guess, by virtue of the fact that this made such an impression on me that, this is a teacher who's coming to my school that I actually know from outside of school, and how novel a thought that was. And I was told, when she's in school, you're supposed to, because I knew her very well. And she said, well, when she's here, you call her Miss, whatever. As should be the case, but, and this is when I was like, grade, like three, maybe, I don't know, so maybe somewhere in the fourth grade, something like that. She was substituting for the yo-yo gym teacher, and probably planted the seeds for my distaste of rap music, rap noise. It's not music. But the larger kind of point here, the larger idea is, and this is a video about health, so we're going somewhere with all this. We're building up to something. Okay. The larger idea here is that there was a time, and this is what bureaucracy destroys, when you have the federal government telling every single school, dictating to every single local municipality what it can and can't do, and the kind of philosophical underpinnings that all of this comes from it comes from the hubris of man to think that it comes from a man thinking, if we could only run the entire country exactly like this, if we could only systemize, if we could only streamline all this, and so you have the federal government, and that's where Common Core came out of, which even Massachusetts is back. I keep forgetting the word backpedaling on right now, because it was a complete failure. you just can't. You don't want that anyway. So the point here with the with the substitute gym teacher is that there was a time in this country when you actually the people who taught school, say a child would kind of have some connection, some natural family or friend, family friend connection with outside the classroom. But now, again, because the federal government is controlling everything now, you have, think about it. Back in the day, I know, I heard a fake news story recently on how what a travesty it is that you have children teaching other children things because there just aren't enough teachers or whatever. And I'm like, well, that sounds kind of like the old one-room schoolhouse. And I got a little nostalgic for a second for, when we actually lived in a better country and children were brought up to be ruggedly individualist, very self-sufficient at a very young age. You have, and that of course is, it's a necessity in large families. If you have 8 kids, yeah, you're gonna be on that, that oldest child to, hey, change this kid's diaper because it's more than 2 parents can do, and that is closer to God. That is closer to the center of where America came from. This whole 2.5 or 2.5 child household which is a product largely of Margaret Sanger's streamlined perversion. We're just going to start. Kind of a little bit unsure whether we can support more than 4 children. So after this, we're just going to start offing them. It's really creepy if you think about it. If you realize what you're actually doing, not to mention the psychological scarring that comes with knowing that you've aborted one of your children, and of course the increased cancer risk. By the way, millennials, you notice that every time we deviate from the watch Perform This Way by Weird Al Yankovic, but you notice when you deviate from the natural order, the natural plan, and you get a little bit too creative, things can start going disastrously wrong. And there's always a physical penalty for deviating from the natural order of sexual relations. You can make a case. I definitely believe that as far out there as Mormon polygamy is, of course, no Mormons actually do that anymore, right? Just like they don't have magic underwear. As far out there as Mormon as the cult of Mormonism is, where you die and you inherit your own world. This is what Glenn Beck believes, by the way, and Mitt Romney pays lip service to, but we all know that Mitt Romney just doesn't give an F about anything. Yeah, the tar baby guy. Yeah. It's such a good analogy. I know that, if you've been watching the fake news, it's it kind of has that aroma of racism, but with the tar baby thing, it's such an analogy. I can think of, there's a Bible verse, don't cast pearls before swine. A lot of us, when we kind of we start to learn that there's a better American way, there's a Christ who loves us, the first thing we want to do is we want to pull everybody up to that better way. But the truth is that the vast majority of people don't want to. They don't. There's such a. You need to have that epiphany moment, and people have to have it for themselves. For me, maybe it was that butch lesbian at Brookstone. She was living in a delusional world in which she was going to marry another woman, and unless you crave something better, you could, she really needed a Saul Paul experience where Saul was, he literally was blindsided by the light of God, and he was struck off his horse. So he fell off his horse, and that's how Paul stopped murdering Christians, and and then suddenly started directing all of that intense energy. We know the psychologists tell us that the aggressive and the sexual is all kind of one part of the brain. So Saul got his jollies from killing Christians. So it's kind of a funny concept today, but that's and he became one of the most useful to God of all. So he redirected that energy that he had previously given over to the biblical equivalent of lesbianism, and he redirected that to follow Christ, and you can too. It's all about just utilizing those untapped talents. It's this Christian ideal of real reform. Most things that people call reform in government are actually just the opposite. But anyway, we've gotten far away from the whole Jim thing, which the promise of the premise why you're watching this video. So we want to be faithful to that. Want to honor my commitment to you about what this episode is about. So anyway, technology has divided us. I'm in an automobile, and the irony of ironies that I'm. It's not really ironic at all, but I guess it's ironic if you don't understand what technology does to people. It kind of is. It still is kind of ironic. The car, the automobile has divided families quite a bit. There was a time where, well, if you've ever written a movie script of any drama of any kind, there's this trope. And it's not a trope. It's a common scenario. I guess you could call it a trope. But you have a survival situation, and what it does is it brings the most unlikely kinds of enemies together, and because all of a sudden the stress of a violent situation, where it's you against the world, it bonds humanity together. And when you don't, sometimes we get around that artificially through things like the automobile, or you create illusions that suggest otherwise, and it's an illusion. It's an illusion. If you look at, obviously, Tom Hanks is kind of a wacko Hollywood liberal, but there's that movie with the ball that he made. He started to imagine other people on the island because he had that need for interpersonal connection. And this is not that. I'm not that. And if you think I'm your friend, I'm not. I'm merely a figment of your imagination. But there's if you're not careful with electronics, they help you to create an unhealthy illusion of interpersonal connection. And I would venture to suggest that illusion, all by itself, is single-handedly responsible for most of the violent, all the violence that you hear about today. There's a lot of fake news suggestion to the effect of promoting terrorism, promoting domestic terrorism, promoting violence. And I've written at length about how that happens. We can't go into all that in this episode, but there's an illusion. And this is all related to the point I was making about the gym teacher. There was a time when you knew everybody in your life, and that's why we like small towns. That's what people say they love about people from the heartland love about their town, is that they know all the people in their world. You're not gonna default on a loan because you know the people who are loaning you that money. It's not coming from the federal bureaucracy. As Newt Gingrich told me once at a New Hampshire renewal conference, or Renew America. It's been a while. The farther away the people who are shelling out the money, John Q. taxpayer, gets away from the people who are actually spending that money, the less accountability there is and the more waste, which is why the federal government is the most inefficient public charity in existence. Because you don't know, you're just giving your money to the IRS, and the IRS gives it to someone else, who gives it to someone else, and in the end, dollar is spent on inviting more illegal rapists into the country. In California, if you're on the East Coast, or maybe if you're in California, it's giving I don't know, giving heart attacks to all your illegals who you wish would I don't know. Anyway, you don't know where your money's going. It goes into the black hole of federal government, and then it gets redistributed and redistributed again and redistributed again. And by the time it comes out the other end, it's like the game of telephone. You don't know. It's something completely different than what it was intended for. And this is why we Christians and libertarians, two sides of the same coin, by the way. We Christians and libertarians, it truly is. The leftists, the fake news try to divide us, but you'll notice that no one has ever won an election against the fake news liberals, the fake news communist commucrats. You can't call them Democrats. They don't even want democracy. They want outright anarchy at this point. If you look at AOC, that's what it comes down to. That's what the communists want. They want to destroy us. They want to destroy America because they don't know any better. They're miseducated misanthropes, or misanthropes, because they're sick, and they're sick because they've spent their whole lives in a fake news media world. You venture outside your city. You discover that small town, and people are so much more friendly, and at the same time they're so much more. They have a healthy guardedness and conservatism about them because their way of life is one in which they know everybody. They know, and they expect to know everybody, and they don't want outsiders to mess with what they're doing. They know where their municipal dollars are going. They're more likely to be attending a town meeting. They're more likely to know everybody at their town meeting, and coincidentally, there's less opportunity for some political hack to come in and say, well, gee, I could really I could win over the majority vote and use public money for this brilliant idea that I've had, where we're going to give out free free cake and ice cream to everybody every single day of the year, 3 times a day, which is really what the whole free college thing is free cake. I don't know. I have to give credit to fill in for the great Rush Limbaugh. I don't know what his name is, but he was better than that British guy they had. I guess Rush Limbaugh has the flu lately. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the great Rush Limbaugh. And I try to credit people where it's due, and it was a really great notion that this fill-in